Alrighty, here we are again, folks, on a Friday. One of the best days of the week, Friday, and arguably Saturday. We're doing another Hobby Hangout. This is going to be good. All right. Well, for those of you that don't know, I'm Wes. Welcome to my channel. We're going to be doing some Hobby Hangouts for a while. I've got 2 hours blocked out tonight. So we're going to be doing a little bit of that, and this is going to be a weekly thing going on Friday nights at 9 o'clock. So buckle up. Here we go. Feel free, if you have something you want to work on at home, some little craft, feel free to just kind of sit tight, listen in. Feel free to join in the chat too, say hi, whatever, and we'll get a little dialogue going while we do this. So I've got a bunch of stuff project-wise that I'm kind of floating between. Going to be working on, I don't know, a couple of small projects. I've got some bigger projects that have been going on in the background that I'm kind of chipping away at here and there. And so that's what we're going to be doing tonight. I hope everybody had a good week. I know, the social distancing quarantine thing is still in full effect. The lockdown, as it were. So, I know a lot of people are stuck at home and whatnot. So I hope you have stuff to at least keep your minds occupied, keep yourselves busy. Like I said, I hope things are going well. And yeah, it's just the end of another week for me. But yeah, we're here to have some fun. So first things first. I think. Kind of a silly little project that I have, but it should be relatively straightforward. I have here a bag of like 3D printed and like resin cast, just little odds and ends, barrels, crates, just kind of weird little scatter train, couple treasure chests, etc. So I've got a ton of extra like rectangular bases that I'm not using for any of my actual like wargaming stuff. So a lot of that stuff is going to now become bases for some of this to make like scatter terrain for the tables. And that's the first thing I'm going to be working on. So not terribly exciting, but I'm going to be sitting here gluing stuff to bases, and then probably next week or some further time during the weekend, I'll sit down and prime it all and get it all ready for painting. Yeah, so that's project number one. Once that's done, because realistically, I don't think that'll take too long. I got this little fella right here, little zombie. He's all primed up and ready, so I'm just gonna slap some paint on him, I think. And then my ongoing project is I've been working on a big chunk of what are they here? The Black Knights from Games Workshop for my Legions of the Gash armies. So I've got a fair bit of progress going on those guys. I think since last week's little show, I got this guy mostly done. I don't know how kind of blown out that gets there in the light, but obviously the horse's head is not attached yet, but that I'll be painting up separately. And in terms of like actual progress, I've got the horses pretty much done, the skeleton and like bone horse done, and then I've got a base coat on all of the cloth. So nothing super fancy there, but provided I've got time tonight, which we'll see how things go. I'm gonna chip away at those and put some more work into the mounts and some more work into the riders. So we'll see. My libations for the evening come courtesy of a buddy of mine at work, Justin. He actually owns a brewery, Ravenous Brewing Co. This is their coffee milk stout. and I haven't had a chance to try it yet. He's been hyping it up to me for a while, and so this is my first first go around trying this stuff out. So I am a pretty big fan of stouts, I have to say. I've enjoyed many in my day. It smells delightful. Oh yeah, yeah, that's good. That's good. So if anybody out there likes a good stout and happens to be local to the Rhode Island, Massachusetts area, as they are a Rhode Island-based brewery in Cumberland, give them a shot because the stuff's real good. Real good. All right. So the whole reason I decided I was going to base a lot of these little scatter terrain bits, realistically, a lot of it's born out of laziness. I don't like having to, when I'm going to set up a table, I don't want to have to put all the buildings down and then meticulously place all of the barrels and the crates and stuff like that. Doing so might be a little bit more, I guess, immersive. It might look a little nice, but I kind of like the functionality of the bases. Makes things a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more stable, and ultimately, I think it's going to be a good call. I have plenty of circular bases that are probably a little bit bigger and might actually be a little bit better for this purpose. But I wanted to use the square ones because I don't really have another use for them. They're just kind of collecting at this point. And B, if I'm going to try and put stuff up against, like, say, the side of a building, or, you want to get some bases of some troops or something right up against the barrier for line of sight. If it's a flat edge base, they'll snug up a little bit better, and aesthetically it will look a little better, and game wise it won't take up quite as much space, and you'll be able to kind of tuck in a little easier. So I didn't want to have all that sort of blank negative space by putting them all on round bases. So that's at least the thought process there. So anyway, there's a bunch of different things here. Some of these were 3D printed by my good buddy Joe. Some of these were Amazon purchases. Honestly, some of them might have been from eBay. I don't think so. I think it was mostly Amazon and my buddy and his 3D printer and his generosity. So, yep, that's what we're dealing with here. So, anyway, you can see some of these. I hope little crates, small little rectangular crates. So I'll probably be. I've got a few different types of barrels here. I'll again hold these up so you can kind of get a general sense here. Oh, there's another one. So there's these 3 different types, different sizes, slightly different makes. So, like I said, I'll be kind of stacking these up around. A couple little, I don't know, it's real blown out, isn't it? There you go. A little treasure chest here, and yeah. So somewhere here I have my trusty Gorilla Glue, and we're gonna get to work. See, my dad has joined us in the chat here. Everyone say hello to Pete. Hope you guys are doing well in New Mexico. This particular set of bases, if I recall correctly, came with my first batch of dire wolves for my army, and they, being an older model, they came with the older style Warhammer Fantasy Battle sort of rectangular bases. These were like the cavalry bases. Then I'd stuck them down on here to do priming and so forth, and so Anyway, once they were all painted up, I snapped them off and put them on the appropriate size bases for the actual game. So, put a little glob of super glue. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten around to getting myself any accelerant yet to help this dry a little faster. So it would be nice if I had some, but I haven't yet gotten around to it. I'll add it to the old Amazon wish list at some point. Chip away at it. And speaking of Amazon wish lists, my dear wife, for those that didn't see the post already on Facebook, and this is going to be a little weird to hold up here. My wife picked up for me as a just kind of surprise gift actually I think it was supposed to be an Easter gift if memory serves, but it's a wet palette, which is quite nice. I'm rather fond of it. So I'll pop the top off here, and you can see what it looks like here. It's got a little sponge inside, if you're not familiar, with some porous paper on the top of it. Normally, I use like a parchment paper because it's just porous enough that a little bit of that moisture can leach through, but not so porous that the paint leaches back through. And it just does a pretty good job of acting as a barrier between the water. But the idea is that because that barrier is at least semi-porous, that moisture from the water and the sponge underneath leaches up through and keeps your paints moist and workable for a longer period of time, so you don't end up wasting a ton of paint over and over and over again by constantly having to like scoop some out, or like with the dropper bottles, that kind of thing. So that's what it's for, and that's essentially how it works. Up until now, I was using just sort of a ghetto wet palette that I made out of an old, what was it? An old Tupperware like sandwich container that I folded up like a big wad of paper towel at the bottom to act as the sponge, and then just filled it up with water enough so that the paper towel was thoroughly soaked, but not like floating. And then usually I add in the mix a little bit of this, which I actually need to pick up another bottle at some point, larger one if I can find it, because I use a good amount of this stuff. But it's the Liquitex Flow Aid. It's an additive. You can either mix it directly with paint. I tend to put it in my rinse water so that I'm always adding at least a little bit when I'm, like I rinse my brush, it comes out, it's got a little bit of water on it, a little bit of flow aid still on it. And it just helps that paint, work a little bit smoother. And that same mixture I put in my wet palette. So there's that sort of like mix of flow aid and water that's helping the paint stay nice and fluid. So, all right, we got progress. The first crate glued to a thing. So, yep, this is where we're at today. We're working on this. So, like I said, not super exciting, but it's got to be done. Actually, I suppose in the name of efficiency, set some glue on this. Set this one down to dry. While it's drying, I'll do the next. And onwards and so forth. So, how's everyone doing today? I see 3 people at least tuned in at the moment. Hope everybody had a reasonably good week. What's up, Brandon? How's it going, buddy? Doing well. I'm doing well. No major complaints for the day. Pretty solid week. Got through it all. Got out of work alive. What am I up to on tonight's live? Well, I've got a ton of projects going, all kind of simultaneously, and so I'm kind of hopping around from thing to thing. Currently, I'm in the process of gluing. I've got a bunch of, let's see if I can not blow that out, little 3D printed and resin cast crates. I've got barrels. I've got little treasure chests, stuff like that. So I'm in the process of gluing them all onto some small rectangular bases, and just to kind of use in my games and so forth. And so that's project the first. Project the second. I have this little zombie. Looks like a once upon a time maybe he was a farmer, but no more. He's a zombie, and so I'm going to be painting him up once I get some of this stuff glued up. And if I have time after all that is said and done, here's a little bit of progress from where I was at last week. But I don't know how well that. Here, hang on. Put this down, and we'll do these real professional things. So this is one of the Black Knights. It's a little skeletal knight, and this is the only one I've got kind of close to done right now. Obviously, the horse's head is missing, but I've got a sweet little baggie over here of horse heads, because that's not a creepy thing to say. And I'll be priming those and painting those probably tomorrow. My understanding is it's supposed to rain tomorrow, so I'll be probably hitting up the airbrush out in the garage just to kind of get that done and out of the way. But I've got 4 more that are at least the skeletal part is done, like all the bone, and then I've got purple base coat down on the cloth, and so then that stuff is going to be at least base coated, and so hopefully I'm going to be working on that if again I have time tonight. We'll see. Am I brush painting or airbrushing? I am. So most of it's brush painting. I am using airbrush for the majority of what I use the airbrush for right now is just like adding base coats and primers and stuff like that. So I do have an airbrush that my folks were kind enough to get me for like Christmas, I think 2 years ago. And it took me a while to finally get like a spot cleaned up to like get it set up. Part of the struggle of being a parent is finding that little bit of free time that you need, especially when it's like, a 1.5-year-old. So, but finally managed over the last well, actually I got the airbrush set up probably, a few months back. So it took me about a year to do it, but I finally got there. But yeah, it's been working out pretty well for me. And I'm going to eventually get into work on actually using it in my painting. But right now it's predominantly for just putting primer on everything. And it puts on just like a super even coat, super thin coat. Doesn't obscure any detail or anything. So that's what I tend to like it for. I did actually, and this is might actually be one of the first instances of me trying to actually like paint a model with airbrush for a good chunk of it. But I actually just picked up a commission that I've been pretty excited to do. He came to me with the idea for doing this commission, I want to say maybe a year ago or something like that. But it's for his D&D game, and his wife and he were trying to save up some money. I think they were looking to buy a house or something like that. I don't remember the exact details, so he kind of had to back out before I got started on it. But I've had the model sort of like waiting here for basically him to greenlight the project. And so with the recent stimulus packages that went out to everybody, he reached out to me and was like, "Hey, you still have that thing?" And I was like, "Of course I do." And he was like, "All right, consider it greenlighted." And so we worked out the details. This is the model here. Again, it's white, and so it's grossly blown out here. But if I hold it sideways, it's a giant worm. So I get the distinct joy of painting this up like a lava worm. So that's going to be pretty exciting. And so I think once I get it primed, I'm going to be going in with the airbrush. And my game plan, we'll see how it turns out, because a lot of this is sort of trial and error. But my game plan is on all of the, and I don't know how well this is going to show up on the, you can see here like the segmented scale right here, like up underneath it. I'm going to shoot yellow up underneath it and then have that fade from yellow to orange to like a reddish brown, and then everything else is just going to be black. So it's like, you know, the magma fire like inside, and then the further out the scales go, they cool and turn into like black. So I'm pretty stoked for the project, realistically, and I'm gonna probably start it up next week or so, and we'll see how that goes. Fortunately, he didn't really give me much of a time frame on it, and since we're all kind of in lockdown anyway, it's not like he's going to need it in a week or two. But I'm excited to, you know, get another commission in, and so yeah, that's kind of the deal. Oh, and I have a week of vacation coming up, middle of next month. So worst case scenario, if I haven't gotten an opportunity to really hammer much of it out before then I've got that whole week that I can, you know, commit a reasonable amount of time to getting it done then. So I imagine by the end of that, it'll be 100% done. But I'll keep you guys posted as we go. So that'll be fun. Yeah, the colors should be kind of cool. I don't know. Now that I've got this stream going, I don't know if there's a way that I can like share screen or anything like that. But I basically, I was jumping around on Google Images and I found an image. It's actually from, it looks like one of the various like D&D 5th edition supplement books, but it's actually a creature just called a lava worm. And it has like essentially that same sort of color scheme to it. And this was like the artist's sort of sketch and illustration of what this thing is supposed to look like. So basically, I'm going to be taking that color scheme and attempting to apply it to this model. So, like I said, we'll see how that works out. I'm fairly confident that it won't be super difficult. I have a pretty straightforward, I spent probably like, I don't know, 30, 45 minutes yesterday just kind of staring at the model, trying to figure out how I was going to paint it and like what techniques I was going to use where, you know, what sort of like effects I wanted to do, how best to achieve those and so forth. Just kind of the planning stages and so forth. And so I'm relatively confident that it'll turn out, well, all right, let me rephrase that. I'm pretty damn confident that it's going to turn out awesome. It's just sort of, there might be a little trial and error along the way, I guess. So, yep, that is the plan. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and plug my buddy's brewery here. My buddy Justin owns Ravenous Brewing Co. in Cumberland, Rhode Island. And tonight's selection is their coffee milk stout, and it is absolutely delicious, and I cannot recommend it enough. So if you are a beer fan at all, especially any of the darker sort of heavier stuff, I highly recommend it. And they're doing a curbside pickup thing. So if you go online and hit up their website, you can order online and then just pick it up right out front. And so did that today. Got myself a 4-pack of this, and I tell you what, it was a good life decision. It's delightful. Oh, really? That's awesome. Yeah, I have yet to. This was my first time actually going to the brewery. They were in Woonsocket for a while, and I remember exactly how long ago it was. Um, I want to say 6, maybe 8 months. I don't know, I'm real bad with judging time, but something along those lines. And they moved from their Woonsocket location because it just was not, did not have the space they needed anymore. So they had to upgrade to the new spot in Cumberland. And um, him like post on Facebook and stuff about like the progress that he was making when they were putting that space together. So once this is all over, I hope to actually be able to go inside and check it out and actually like attend a couple of events there because it looks like a cool time. Cheesesteak, yeah. I mean, steak and cheese is one of life's greater things. And I really wish I had some activator. I don't know if it's just because this is like trying to glue resin to plastic, or even like the 3D printed plastic to other plastic. But this like Gorilla Glue, it's the just regular Gorilla Super Glue, and this stuff usually it's never failed me, but it's taken forever to set. You got to take off, Brandon. All right, man. Will you have yourself a good one? Stay safe. Good talking to you. Hey, Ashley. How's it going? Welcome to the party. Oh, well, there's part of the problem. Because some of these are resin cast, when the resin cured, it like shrank. So some of them, the bottoms are a little hollow. So the glue is not even touching some of these bits. That could prove problematic. Fortunately, I have at least a modicum of ingenuity. Um, Now the question is, somewhere I had a couple of emery boards, and I was just going to kind of file down those edges until it was a little bit more flush. Barring that, I know I have sandpaper, but that's in the garage, and I don't want to get up and walk away from the computer midstream, as I feel that to be unprofessional. And as you can tell from the quality of this fine broadcast, I am nothing if not professional. So that being said, those options are right out. So option the third is trim the edges with an X-Acto knife. Not my first choice, but it'll work. Take care, Dad. Thanks for stopping by. All right. Let's always nice when the parents stop in for a little moral support. All right. Oh yeah, that'll work. Oh, I just glued it to my thumb. I don't care what your hobby is, involves adhesive. There has been at least one instance where you have glued something to you. Let me tell you, if you don't catch it until whatever it is good and dry, you'd be a little uncomfortable. Hey, Ashley. Thanks for asking. Well, I'm working on a bunch of different stuff today. I have a few little projects and one big ongoing project. Um, right this second, I'm in the process of, let me put this stuff down, do this. I'm in the process of gluing little resin cast and 3D printed crates, barrels, and chests to these little bases. So that they will be easier to put out on whatever table I happen to be playing on, and as opposed to having to like place each individual piece and stack them up. Someone bumps the table, the whole stack falls over. Doing this, they're a little bit more likely to stay standing, and they will hopefully sort of look nice and kind of flush up against the walls of buildings and stuff. Hey, Lori, how's it going? I trim some of these resin cast bits because when they were drying in the mold, the the resin has a tendency to just kind of like shrink ever so slightly. And so it was filled up to the top of the mold and then it shrank a little bit. So the top is bowed, or the bottom, I should say, is bowed upwards ever so slightly. So the issue I was running into was I put the super glue on the base and then attempted to stick this to the super glue. And because it's sort of bubbled up, it wouldn't like actually touch the glue. Therefore, I couldn't get it to adhere. So got my trusty hobby knife and getting it a little bit more flat so that hopefully I can get a decent bond. Thank you very much, Lori. I appreciate that. That's very kind of you to say. I certainly do my best, but or at least sometimes I do my best. Other times I'm just rushing to get stuff done. But often I give it my best. So I'm definitely still learning, and there's a lot left for me to learn. That's for sure. But we're all kind of on our own respective journeys in life, and that happens to be part of mine. All right, let's see. All right, that should work a little better. Get those stacked up. Yeah, it looks like I had this problem with a few different ones. That's all right. Like I said, nothing a little ingenuity can't fix. Key is just not to drive the knife into your thumb. That I've done before, and let me tell you, it's, it's largely unpleasant. Fortunately, it wasn't doing anything like this, but it was. required many a stitch, and it was not a good day. I think if I remember correctly, the worst part of it, to me at least, the worst part of it was I had just started my current job, which is warehouse work. So I work in a medical supply distribution warehouse, and so uh, being that it's warehouse work, it's very physical, sort of like hands-on work. And I had accidentally managed to jam the blade of my hobby knife into the tip of my thumb. It was mighty uncomfortable, and as I said, took several stitches to fix up. But the most awkward part was it was within my first week of starting this job, and so I felt like an extra dipshit as a result. So you know, Chris, how's it going? I see you over on the YouTube chat there. How are you today? How was your week? I hope everything went smoothly for you. Now, Chris, I know you know the gentleman of whom I speak, but I today I had the good fortune of trying uh, one of Justin's fine beers at Ravenous Brewing, and this is the Coffee Milk Stout. If you have not tried it, if you are a fan of stouts, let me let me be the first to recommend it. I'm sorry, Ashley. Yeah, I realize that may have been a little more information than was necessary, but you know, yeah. Chris, I stopped by their new location today in Cumberland, and was that a sponsorship? Oh man, I wish. Although I have been plugging this beer since I cracked it open, so this is definitely we'll say not a sponsorship, but it's definitely an unpaid promotion. But I had the fun task today of installing a new shower head in the upstairs bathroom, and turning that shower on for the first time after newly installing this thing is always, anytime you ever do that, it's always like one of the more nerve-wracking things. Even though it's just water, like you don't want to get it on the ceiling. You'd rather not get it on the walls. The floor is tile. You can mop it, you can towel it, whatever, but it's still like it could make a mess. You just desperately don't want it to. And fortunately, everything went smoothly. And it was when I finally got to break it in. It was a wonderful shower, but my hair is still wet and is poofing. So I'm going for the tie back. All right. This is going to be an interesting one to attach. You can tell some of the 3D printed stuff because if you look at the bottom, you can see where all the inside structures are, and it's all hollow. I have to just sort of go for contact points. I do know someone with a 3D printer. I know, well, you know somebody with a 3D printer as well. Um, Joe, from work. Um, he has a couple of 3D printers actually. So he's printed me up a few things from time to time. And one of these days, I'd like to get one for myself. Just an inexpensive something. But he printed up some things for me here. He had a rather interesting filament for one of his printers that I think the plastic has like wood fibers sort of in it. So like when you print things with it, it gives it like a almost a woody sort of texture. Um, he used it to print out some got like a few of these in different shapes and stuff, and it was interesting to see the texture. It doesn't not likely that it will show up well here, but it's got a very interesting texture when compared to like. Yeah, Chris, that's a tough call. CNC milling machine or 3D printer. I don't know in a general sense, but I'm not crazy. Uh, yeah, actually, it's kind of like that. Yeah, so I don't know. For me, for my purposes, Chris, I think 3D printer would be far more my speed, but the milling machine would definitely be an interesting piece. I think definitely something I'm adding to the Amazon wish list for a bump to the top of the queue is some super glue accelerant. I think, if memory serves, I think one of the more sort of popular brands is Zap-A-Gap, I think. Sherry, hi, how's it going? Thanks for stopping in to say hi. This is definitely even these little resin cast barrels. Basically, all the resin stuff is needs some sort of trimming. In a perfect world, I'd use some sandpaper or an emery board or something, but for whatever reason, my emery boards don't seem to be within arm's reach. I think there might be one or two out in the garage, and definitely have some sandpaper out there, but not about to get up midstream and go rooting around in the garage. Even though technically I know right where it is, but you know, how did last week's project turn out? Last week's project turned out fairly well. Um, my, I'll grab it here in a second to show off. But if I were to critique my own work, which I do often, it did not come out as well as the first. Some of that may have been because I failed to write down exactly what steps I took on the first one because I was just kind of tinkering at that point and was not anticipating liking it as much as I did. It was very much a trial. And then when the first one turned out really nicely, and I decided I was going to try and replicate it, I did my best just kind of from memory to replicate not only the paints I used, but the techniques as well. So I would argue that it was sort of a mixed success thing. It still turned out pretty decent, but uh, it's not as good as the first one, I think. But that being said, they are right behind me, so let me just pop up real quick, grab them. All right. So this one here, kind of kill some of that glare a little bit. This one here is the first one I did. Bring it up a little bit, and kind of flip it this way, show it off a little bit. So on the first one I did, this little bit here in particular with the veining, I wasn't super keen on. Just that big sort of like out of the way bubble. But otherwise, I was really happy with how that veining turned out altogether. And I mean, it's getting real tight in there. I don't know if you can see the eyes. It's kind of shaky on the camera there, but I think I did a better job on the eyes on this one than I did trying to replicate it on the second one. So that being said, this is how the second one came out. Again, nothing super wrong with it, I guess. It's serviceable. It looks like what it's supposed to look like, I think, for the most part. But I think the cracks are a little too clean. The cracks are a little too clean. It looks like either I used more diluted black paint on the first one, so it was less stark of a line, but it also looks like I took the same black mix and then stippled it sort of over to kind of like bleed out the line and look like, sort of like dots of extra, sort of mineral buildup and stuff like that around it. So I may go back into the second one and try and sort of replicate that a little bit. But ultimately, I'm happy with how it came out. Like not as good as the first one, in my opinion. I don't like it as much, but it, when the two of them are together, they look pretty good. They look pretty similar. I think the first one, yeah, I don't know. That's my 2 cents. That's my sort of self critique there. So it looks like I need to hit them with some matte varnish at some point. I thought I did it to the first one, but the first one actually looks glossier than the second one right now. So I don't think I did. Chris, other progress I made. This was a project that I'd hoped to get some done last week on the actual stream, but I took so long on this that I didn't actually get to it. But during the week, I did manage to get one of my skeleton knights mostly done here. And the horse's head obviously isn't there. I have a bag with a bunch of the heads in it, and I'm just going to go and prime all of those maybe tomorrow afternoon or early tomorrow morning or something like that. Prime those and then just bang those out in relatively short order, and then stick those on by themselves. If I had put the heads on independently, or not independently, if I had put them on at the same time that I built the rest of the model and tried to paint it all together, the rider I had painted separately. Like here you can see some work in progress of one of the bodies of the horse, and then I've got the rider here separate. But the way the heads work with the reins and the bridle and all that stuff. When you try to put the rider on, if the head is attached, it just doesn't work. So I needed to keep the heads separate so that I could keep the riders separate, and it was like a whole thing. So anyway, one of the fun things about making terrain like this, where it's just sort of like little bits of scatter terrain and table dressing and so forth, is it doesn't take a lot of thought, and it definitely doesn't take a lot of skill, that's for sure. But you don't have to be particularly neat or precise with anything. Like, the idea is to make it look like it's a stack of crap that's been sitting outside forever. You know what I mean? So like with the crates and stuff, like, you don't want them perfectly stacked. You want them like kicked at weird angles. And in order to make it look like not a cookie cutter, you just kind of stick them on there, and whatever angle they end up at just sort of is what it is. You want it to kind of seem natural, even though it's man-made stuff. If that makes any sense whatsoever. I appreciate that, Chris. Thank you. It's all right. I'm happy enough with it. Let's put it that way. It's definitely not my best work, but I also wasn't going for my best work. I was going for just kind of good enough. I'm a strong believer that one, I can always go back and add more paint later. So if I decide that I want to push it up to a slightly higher quality, I can do so at a later date. First of all. Second of all, not everything I paint has to be like the best thing I can paint, because if I tried to do that, I would, one, drive myself completely insane, and two, I would get nothing done. So there's kind of a point at which I look at it and go, yeah, it's good enough. And so that piece definitely reached that. There's definitely some things I'd like to change and wasn't super happy with, but again, I don't want to sit there and stress over the little things. He is one of, I have 10 that are primed and in some semblance of being painted. I have another 5 that are in my bin here for the Army that are, I'd say, like half done. Like all of the 5 guys in the unit are at about 50% completion. Let's put it that way. So I have to finish that first 5, like, to the same level this guy was at. He was sort of my test model in a way. Like, I just wanted to get one done to a reasonable standard so that I could look at it, see if I needed to adjust any of the color placement, any of the color like scheme at all. Like maybe there was something that just didn't work. But for the most part, everything jives pretty well. So the rest of them are going to be pumped out pretty much the same way. The only major difference I'm going to be doing going forward is I'm trying to get myself into the good sort of best practice habit of painting all of the non-metallic surfaces to completion, and then hitting it with a layer of matte varnish to seal all of that in. And then over the top of the matte varnish, going in with all of the metallics and getting all of those painted, and then bring all of that to its final state. Mostly because, if you put a bunch of like shiny, bright metallics and then you hit that with matte varnish, it's going to just dull that right down. The only The only real like argument against that, I guess, in this, rusted and weathered and just kind of shitty anyway. And I feel like that first one I did is almost borderline on too clean, and could use a little bit more grime and a little bit more weathering. But again, that's the kind of stuff that's really easy to add later. So, like I said, I wasn't too worried about getting that like 100%. So, Chris, you had mentioned that you had found yourself a new casual MMO to play. What is this? Yeah, weathering and battle damage, in my opinion, is the way to go. Caravan Stories, huh? I can honestly say I've never heard of it. Is it PC, mobile? What's the? I always kind of laugh when I hear about a mobile game that calls itself an MMO because, in my opinion, they're never actually MMOs. Oh, PS4. Okay, that's cool. What's the game's sort of theme? Is it like a sort of generic sort of fantasy thing, or is it more of a sci-fi, steampunk, something? Yeah, it's usually a good plan. Oh, it's all over with themes. Okay. Most games I play, I have a tendency to shut off all of the unnecessary sounds. Usually, the only thing I keep is like in-game sound effects and stuff like that, just so that way, if there's any sort of important audio information, then it sort of translates well. But yeah, most of the music I just sort of mute, and the ambient sounds I usually mute. I think one of the only few exceptions to that was back when I played World of Warcraft. I really enjoyed the soundtrack. Like things like listening to that sort of the the super heavy drums when you would enter Orgrimmar for the first time, like that kind of, I don't know. There was something about the vibe that they nailed with their music in that game, and I just feel like a lot of games half-ass the music, and they don't like really make it a sort of a priority. So, which is a shame. Um, I find that stuff really difficult to palate myself. Like, I just don't like. I mean, I'm not a big anime fan in the first place. I've never been. Like, there's a few standout titles in terms of like, anime out there that I've enjoyed. And a lot of like the mainstream anime, like Princess Mononoke and stuff like that. Um, oh, you're taking off, Ashley? Awesome. Well, thanks for sticking around for a little bit. Thanks for saying hi. You have yourself a good night. You take care, okay? But yeah, Princess Mononoke was, something I liked. I liked Ghost in the Shell. Um, and there was, I can't remember right now. Um, there was a few others. I think like Howl's Moving Castle. I enjoyed that. But I think for the most part, I wasn't. I don't know. I kind of missed the mark on a lot of that anime stuff when I was growing up. Never really got into like Dragon Ball Z or the Pokemon shit. I wasn't. It wasn't for me. So yeah, Chris, I'm with you on that one. I tend to like the movies or the really short sort of series, but the long drawn out anime series, I lose interest way too fast. Um, I think a large part of it is like they spend, and I realize that this is an oversimplification and sort of overgeneralization of anime as a whole because I'm sure that there are plenty out there that don't do this. However, that being said, I find that in my experience, the ones that I have seen have been like really long, drawn out, like fight sequences and combat, and I'm just not. Again, I'm just not super into it. I guess. Like I think it tends to be just too drawn out, and it's not. It's almost like they're showing off their animation skills more so than they are actually moving whatever story along. If that makes any sense. Um, so I don't know. I get a little bothered by drawn out anime combat, but yeah. That being said, I don't remember exactly how long the series was. Realistically, I didn't watch the entire series, but Cowboy Bebop is like one of the few exceptions. Like I loved that show when I was younger, and that was on like Adult Swim. That show was my jam. But at the same time, I don't remember that show had a lot of those like Dragon Ball Z style long drawn out fights where they're charging up one punch for 30 minutes. Like that's the stuff I just couldn't. I could never tolerate that. Yeah, it was a lot like Firefly, and Firefly is one of my favorite shows. Um, I For some reason I remember hearing that they were working on possibly doing some kind of like uh, reboot or sort of continuation of the Firefly series. I don't remember what channel what network it was going to be on. Maybe it was going to be like Netflix only thing. I don't remember exactly. Um, and in fact, it could be entirely false. Um, let's just say that if it was done, and it was done with the same cast, and it was done with Joss Whedon writing all the story, um, I would be down. I would watch it for sure because like that for a long time was like one of my favorite TV shows. And it's as any fan of Firefly will tell you, that show died. It was way ahead of its time. There was nothing else like it at the time, and it died way too soon. And it was Fox mismanaging that show basically. So anyway, that's I'm not going to rant about Firefly for much longer, but just needed to get that off my chest. So I'm going to give you guys a little peek here at where I'm at. So you can see here again, it's real basic stuff. It's not super exciting, but it'll look cool when it's painted, when it's on the table. So that's one. Here's another one. Again, just kind of some crates, some barrels. More crates and barrels. And you guessed it, more crates and barrels. But they're looking good. I've got some varied heights. Um, varied heights, and it looks, not super cookie cutter either. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's a win. Oh, really? See, I don't ever like follow what's happening to like people. I'm sure that like comes off sounding terrible, but like celebrities, and which realistically, Joss Whedon is a celebrity in his own right. You know what I mean? Like he's a writer and producer and all that jazz, and director, I think. And but I don't ever like pay attention to what's going on in like Hollywood or pop culture or anything like that. Maybe I should, to at least some degree, because I feel like a lot of conversation I just know nothing about. I think it took me like after she hit like mainstream popularity, I think it took me at least like 6 months to a year to finally figure out who Lady Gaga was. So I don't know, but now she's like a household name, and I know like maybe two songs of hers, and that's it. So thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Yeah, you know, I'm going for natural in terms of like, some dude was lugging this heavy thing and was just like, all right, this far and no farther. We'll just drop this here. So kind of wish in a way that I had like a wider variety of stuff, but I do have, so some of the things that I have that will be added to some little bases to scatter around is I've got this little guy here. It's like a little carrion bird sitting on top of a road sign. So that's going to get painted up and put on like just a little base. Somewhere I've got a couple of other little bits and bobs. I don't remember what I did with them. That's the sad part is I had a bunch of this stuff and I was like, oh, I can save this and use this for tonight's stream. And I'd taken some time yesterday to kind of like split all this stuff out, and then somehow managed to forget where I put all of it. So good job for my brain working. Huh. Oh well. Still have these, and when this is done, as I said, I'll jump over to working on this sweet little zombie. In reality, I might. What time is it now? 10:13. Yeah, I don't know how I would get like an Apple core kind of thing, but definitely I have some like grass tufts and stuff like that, so I'm gonna kind of cut some of those up and stick those in between so it looks like some of them have been sitting around for a while. That kind of thing. So we'll see. We'll see. All right. I think I'm gonna do one more and then pack up all the little bits and pieces. And we'll say that 5 of these little things will be good enough for now. Because I do want to get to painting this little zombie dude, because I think he's going to be fun to just slap some paint on. Normally, for Warcraft, normally for Warhammer, the zombies come in like massive horde units. Like you would imagine, like most people aren't afraid of like 1 or 2 zombies, but when you've got like 40 zombies chasing you, that's friggin' terrifying. So the they're intended to go in like large groups of I think the maximum unit size is something like 60, which is insane, and I think that might be like one of the largest. It's like that and goblins at 60 for the little night goblin stabbers and shooters. Those are like the largest unit sizes in the game, I think. But this is like just like a single one. I don't have any others. Eventually, I'll pick some up, but this was a gift from a friend of mine who just like happened to have just one zombie laying around and was like, "Here, you want a zombie?" And I was like, "Hell yeah, I do." He'll probably end up getting used for like a Warcry warband or something like that. The Legions of Nagash Warcry warband is all skeletons. It doesn't have zombies in it whatsoever. But I'll probably just use him as like a counts as skeleton, you know, just like a basic kind of lame skeleton. I have my the leader of that warband is the one of the necromancers in my Legions of Nagash army, and I've got him painted up. There's pictures of him, I think, on my Facebook and definitely on my Instagram. So that's out there. That's cool. I had a lot of fun with him. He was actually like an eBay rescue, if memory serves, and someone had like put him up on eBay. I don't even think they painted him. They just kind of primed him, and it was sort of a half botched conversion. They had cut off the guy's head and put like one of the horned Beastman skulls on where his head should be, and I don't know if they just didn't like the way it came out, or they stopped playing the army, or what. When I say it was a botched conversion, I just mean that like it wasn't very seamless. Like there was like a lot of like you could see where the seam and like the glue had kind of melted some of the thing, and you could see where some of it had been clipped away. It needed like a little bit of sanding and a little bit of patching, um, and it was pretty much good to go. Um, and he was a lot of fun to get painted up. Uh, so I will one of these days I'll get to finishing that warband. Wait a second. Is this? Nope. That would have been too easy with. Yeah, I legitimately don't know what I did with all those other little bits I had. But they were like, more road signs and like like a wooden placard with like a piece of parchment nailed to it. One of them was like a little sort of like torch brazier thing on like a stick. Um, just kind of like weird little like one-off bits and pieces. So um, I do well, not as much as I might like to, put it that way. Um, and there's some reasoning behind it. Um, so I back before my daughter was born. So this is going back like a couple years now, and then some. I would frequently go down to the Warhammer store in Franklin, Mass, and that was where I got a lot of my games in, and did a lot of like I'd go down there and like hang out on like a Saturday or something like that for a couple hours and do some painting and just kind of generally hang out. Uh, but the Games Workshop and Warhammer stores in general have like a policy where they don't want any like non IP uh, like miniatures used basically in their on their premises. So like if I ever went to like a tournament there, or like if I ever went to like sort of like an officially licensed like Warhammer tournament, like something like big that was being promoted, I would need to have all of my models be at least largely Games Workshop models. I don't know if like every single piece needs to be. So like if I pulled an arm off of some random model and slapped it on there, they probably wouldn't care. But if I had like an entire unit that was made up of models from another company's range and just had them like be like a counts as kind of thing, that wouldn't fly, and I wouldn't be able to use it. So as a result, I just kind of generally play it safe and always try and use their stuff. So yeah, they're super protective of their IP. Um, I guess they've gotten burned in the past, so it makes sense. But doesn't mean I like it, but I understand it. You know what else I think I'd like to pick up for this kind of application is gel super glue, as opposed to just sort of like the regular super glue. I feel like that might, I don't know. I don't know that it would necessarily be any better or worse, but I feel like it would definitely, I don't know. I think it might be a little bit better. Let's put it that way. Are you referring to like the Warcraft game and lore sort of being a ripoff of Warhammer? Is that what you're? Oh, cool, Chris. No worries. I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me for a little bit. It's been fun. You take care of yourself. Say hi to the family for me. Just managed to glue 3 barrels to my hand simultaneously. That's exciting. Where'd it go? There it is. Here. All right. So that's 5 of those little piles done. I've got some barrels, slid and crates left. I've got some more bases left, but I'm going to call this little bit of project done for now. And over the next, I don't know, probably by next week's show, I will have these things primed, and maybe I'll start painting them up next week. So yeah. That being said, I do have this commission that I need to get started on next week too. So maybe I'll be working on that for some of the show. We'll see. We'll see. All right. What did I do with the cap? All right. Get my mess cleaned up. All right. That's done. Now let's crack into this wet palette. I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I'm going to do it again. Big thank you to my wife for buying this wet palette for me. It's a hugely thoughtful gift, and I am deeply appreciative. Okay, zombie. So, my thoughts for this zombie guy are as follows. His little scythe, the blade of it, we're doing just rusty metal. Simple enough. Um, dark wood for the handle. Um, I'm thinking, pale, semi-green flesh tone where there's flesh. The clothes that I'm sort of a little bit more is clothing. I don't quite know where I want to go with that yet. Um, so we'll see. We'll see where that ends up. I kind of want to. Unfortunately, I don't have the specific colors that I kind of want to use. So I might have to get a little creative and try and mix some stuff up. But I've got some ideas. We'll start with the flesh. Go from there. So I need this. Set brush. Base coating process faster. Because of the wet palette, I actually have a little bit of the paint that I need already ready to go. Because I was using it on the Black Knights I was working on. So, all right. Speaking of which, we're going to take this guy off of here. Grab some of this blue tack. This big wad here. Here. Slide that on the end of this. Oops. Stick this guy on. And we'll get to work. Let's see. So ideally, for at least a part of this gentleman's outfit, probably his like vest. And he's got, it kind of looks like a loincloth, but I'm going to choose to interpret it as a continuation of his shirt. Like his belt is kind of cinched at the waist, and then it's sort of like a longer tunic kind of thing. That's how I'm choosing to look at it. So that being said, that particular bit of clothing I would like to do in some kind of like a burgundy. It's almost like a red wine kind of color. But I don't have the exact color that I want, so I might have to try and mix something. Or maybe if I use one color and then either glaze or wash it with another color, I can get something kind of close. So we'll see. We'll try a couple different things. See what works. But right now, we're focusing just on the flesh. Get all the skin done. His big bald head. And this model, these zombies are real old. Real old. And they're what I would call technically good models in terms of like their sculpts. But I do like them. I think they're definitely a little on the goofy kind of cartoony side, but in a way that's kind of why I like them. Um, and yeah, I don't know. They just had a lot of character. They had a lot of little weird details. Like this guy's beard, for instance, is like this kind of big Amish chin beard, and I don't know what it is about that. I like it. Kind of adds to the whole farmer look this guy's got going on. I feel like I need to name him something suitably Amish. Not that like zombie number 65 needs to have a name necessarily, but it would be kind of cool to have a, especially if he's part of like the Warcry Warband. I think it would be kind of cool to have like a little story for him, some kind of how and why as to why he's in this warband, who he is. And maybe he's a dead relative of the necromancer or something like that. It was his brother. I don't know. That's just a thought. But I feel like his name should be like something suitably Amish, like Obadiah. Now, because this is the first real color going on this model, I'm not being particularly neat because I know that anything else I put on here is going to help tidy this up. So I'm getting all kinds of overpainting on the his clothes and weapon and all that jazz, and I'm not at all concerned about it. The only thing I am real concerned about is getting a smooth, even application of this color on his skin. I can't tell if that shoulder is supposed to be clothed or bare flesh. Looks like bare flesh. We're going to make a judgment call. We're going to make an executive decision here. We're going to go with bare flesh for the top of that shoulder. Sounds like my daughter is not thrilled to still be awake, or at the prospect of having to go to bed. Either one. Or both. Right. Got about 20 minutes left of this. And we're going to just move along here. Skin's not done, but we'll wait. When the skin dries, I can paint something else. You know, one of the other things I could do with this guy is in my Legions of Nagash army, because this guy just kind of looks like a weird half-decayed farmer dude. I could always just make him a counts as necromancer. Maybe maybe his name is Obadiah, but maybe he's one of the other necromancers of my army. I don't know. Sort of just a weird thought, but it could work. Why not? If you've ever seen the sort of original or stock Games Workshop Necromancer model, it's out and about now. He's not exactly a young buck, that guy. So, I mean, technically speaking, it could work. So yeah, we're gonna try and shoot for this cloth of his like shirt and or tabard. It's kind of like a burgundy. I'm gonna be doing Citadel color Screamer Pink, which is a very sort of rich purpley pink. So we're going to use this, and then I think we're going to wash it with their purple wash, which is Droopy Violet, or Drucci Violet. I'm not sure exactly how that's supposed to be pronounced. I don't play 40K. I don't care. Either way, it's a dark purple wash, and I think that the two of those colors together, something vaguely burgundy-ish. And if not, I'm sure it will still look cool. But I think I'm going to give him some worn leather trousers. I think that's the plan. So they're going to be kind of a warm brown color. And I'll use a cream. He's got some like bandages and wraps around his feet. You can tell this was not a zombie of means before he became a zombie. It's definitely definitely not an affluent gentleman. He does not have shoes. Now, one could argue maybe he lost those shoes after he became a zombie. But I would counter that argument and say that zombies are not known for being fashion forward. And had he lost his shoes, he would probably just be walking around barefoot and would not have taken the time to put wraps on his feet. Chances are those wraps are from before he met his unfortunate demise. I don't know. For whatever reason, I take the time to think about these things. color will look nice with this. It's a warm kind of pinky purple color. Seems pretty warm to me at least. So that there's a little bit more contrast on the model. But I don't really feel like so there. I will say I am feeling this color though. Screamer pink here. This was a good call. It's going to do this. It's going to do this pretty solid. So right now we're just kind of putting on thin layer after thin layer to build this up. It's not a super dark color, but it's not a super bright color. Going on over the black primer, it's just taking a few coats to get it dialed in. Got it pretty darn watered down too, so some good thin coats, but it's taking a few to build up that color. But I'll give you a little. Let's see if we can get that color to dial in a little bit, not get super washed out. But just a base coat on the skin and base coat on the cloth so far. Still a fair bit to go. Still some more coats needed on those, but we're just kind of going for speed here. Trying to get this guy. We got about 15 minutes left of this, and I'd like to get at least the base coats done before we're done. So we're going quick and dirty. Jumping back over to the flesh colors right now and trying to tidy up from anywhere I might have gotten a little bit of the Screamer pink onto the skin, and there were a few spots too that were not as strong as I would like in terms of the coat, so I'm sort of reinforcing that flesh tone where it needs it, and just making sure that again we've got good even smooth coverage on all of his skin. So I have, we'll kind of try and give the abridged version of this because I don't have a ton of time left in this broadcast, but I am working on a large project. This is sort of a sneak peek of some stuff to come on this channel. I have planned at some point, hopefully in the near future, but it's the kind of thing that I want it to be of a certain quality, and I'm not going to release stuff just sort of for the sake of it, at least as far as this is concerned. But I'm going to be starting at some point to record Age of Sigmar battle reports. So I have a wonderful group of regular friends, or let me rephrase that a little bit so it doesn't sound quite so strange. I have a group of friends who I game with regularly. There we go. It's not my regular friends versus my abnormal friends. So that being said, that gaming group of mine, I'm hoping to start recording some bat reps with them at some point this year. Is when I would like. Originally my hope, my goal was to start recording that stuff in January, and just start recording and get stuff out there. For various reasons, that did not come to pass, and that's fine. You kind of got to adjust on the fly sometimes. So it's still my plan for this year, at least. But I'm being a little bit more lenient on myself in terms of when I actually start this project. That being said, I have started the project in terms of planning stages, because, in my opinion, what I think is lacking in the world of Age of Sigmar battle reports is a strong focus on narrative. And I don't mean just narrative games as in, here's the story as to why our armies are fighting. But I'm talking like an overarching narrative, like a campaign, something that tells a story about armies, and those factions that those armies represent, and so on and so forth. So I don't have an official name for this project yet. Sort of its personal code name, I guess. That's, I saved all the files under this name just so I can find it on my computer and, whatever. But I'm calling it the Shaiish Project for now. That's sort of its tentative name. But as soon as I come up with something a little catchier and a little bit better, then I will change its name when appropriate. That being said, the Shaiish Project, if you are not familiar, I will sort of approach this from the standpoint that you have no idea what I'm talking about. So in Age of Sigmar, there are 8 realms, 9 if you count the realm of chaos. There is the realm of light, the realm of shadow, the realm of fire, the realm of beasts, the realm of death. What am I forgetting? The realm of heavens, the realm of life, and one more. You know what? It's not important. What is important is the realm of death. So the realm of death is named Shaiish, and that is, Games Workshop's official lore. I didn't make it up, and I don't pretend to. But what they have done in the creation of this lore, they've left a lot of stuff open-ended, intentionally, so that people can feel free to create their own stories within the lore. And they have completely fleshed out a couple of small areas of the realm of death that actually have like a map, and the areas have names and all that kind of stuff. So what I'm planning to do is maybe I'll take one of those places, maybe I'll take like an adjacent area in the map. But I'm going to, with my gaming group and I, we are going to create, and most of us have already picked armies and started building and painting those armies. But we have armies selected that we are going to play in this narrative campaign that is basically going to explain or tell the story of this particular area in Shaiish. So it's the Realm of Death. Not everything in the Realm of Death is dead. There are like humans and people and stuff. It's basically, to explain it simply, each of the realms sort of personifies one of the winds of magic. So it's like the different types of magic. Each one of these realms is sort of the embodiment of that particular type of magic. That's the easiest way to explain it. And so that being said, this one in particular happens to be the embodiment of death magic. And but like I said, like there are like living, breathing, humans and elves and dwarves and all that stuff. All of the things that you would think of as being like typically good races, all of that stuff exists. And I believe at least one of the friends in this gaming group is going to be playing Cities of Sigmar, which is effectively all of those good races sort of put together. I will be playing my Legions of the Gash army, which is fittingly enough, skeletons and a bunch of undead stuff. So it's run by a vampire and has, he's just got like a horde of skeletons at his beck and call. But that's not what I'm delving into. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is that the campaign itself is going to be telling the story of this area and sort of like the major political players and like the heavy hitters in terms of like powerful factions and stuff like that in the area. So there will be a sort of developing overarching story involving sort of those factions and the area at large as this whole thing develops. So we're not changing any of the sort of like base Age of Sigmar rules, but what we are doing is adding to the pre-existing rule sets with some extra stuff. So for those of you that are familiar with any of the Games Workshop history, they had an old skirmish game called Mord, and it was smaller groups and war bands, but you had a progression system where your guys, like all the members in the warband, could gain experience, gain levels, get injuries. There were things that could happen to them that would then have consequence in further games. And I'm going to be implementing a similar style of sort of table that will be rolled on after the game is concluded and before the next session. And the idea is that over time, the heroes will develop, they'll become more powerful. They might get, like, let's say there's one group of skeletons that I have in my army that just refuses to die. It just sticks around battle after battle after battle, and they become like, a little bit better at being a shambling horde. Like maybe they get some bonuses in some way, shape, or form. Alternatively, maybe one of my guys gets shot in the eye and loses an eye, and now he's, has a more difficult time hitting his opponent because he can't see them terribly well. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff I'm going to be going for in this ongoing campaign. It'll be coming sometime this year. I still have a lot of ironing out of little kinks and details, but needless to say, I am very much looking forward to it, and it should be a lot of fun. I hope for those of you that are interested, and even those of you that might not have any idea what I'm talking about, will at least check them out, and it might be something that interests you. Just from, at the very least, sort of an entertainment standpoint. One of the things I need to iron out is actually the sort of style in which I want to record and tell these stories. Traditional battle reports tend to be pretty cut and dry, like basically film the guys that are playing the game. You got a post-game wrap-up kind of situation. And I don't want to say that formula is boring, because I watch and enjoy them, and I have plenty of friends that watch and enjoy stuff with that style. But what I'm getting at is that that content exists, and I don't necessarily know that I could do it any better or worse than the other channels out there that are already putting out that type of content. So I'm basically trying to figure out if there is a necessity for us to stand out a little bit, and if so, maybe that comes in the form of how we present that information. So we'll see. That is for the future. All right. Right now, I've got some dark, sort of reddy brown, and I am in the process of painting his leather trousers to at least get some base coat on there. Kind of rotating the model, getting all the little angles and nooks and crannies, and that's pretty good. How are we doing on time? Ooh, we are there, folks. We've hit 11 o'clock. So that means that it's just about time to wrap this up. As much as I would love to just keep filming and keep going, I should bring this to a close. So we'll stop here. We'll go ahead and show you where we've gotten to with this guy. It's nothing super impressive yet, but currently what we're looking at is this fine zombie fellow right here, and it's a slightly better. He's at a weird angle. What am I doing? Anyway, so we've got that sort of dark purpley pink on the clothes, the reddish brown on the legs there. There's his back. Well, Auntie Finnegan, hello and welcome. So yeah, and then he's got his flesh tone done, at least the base coat for him. So I'll keep working on this guy tonight. Probably get him finished up, or at least close to it, before I head off to bed. And I will be sure to post photos on Instagram and Facebook. So if you don't already follow me on those platforms, I will post the links in the description for YouTube, and I encourage you to follow and definitely like and subscribe to the videos on YouTube there, and share to your friends. We're trying to, or I'm trying to get this growing slowly, and but this is going to be a weekly thing every Friday, and there we go. I'm having fun with it. So we'll see you next week, folks. Next Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern time, and gather up some hobby stuff of your own. Doesn't have to be painting. If you like knitting, if you like, I used to make chainmail, for instance. Like, grab some of that stuff. Grab, you want to do some watercolor painting stuff. You want to do some sculpting. You want to do whatever you want to do. And we'll just sit and talk about the things that we enjoy doing in our free time, spare time. And there you go. So until next time, be safe, be well, and I will see you next week.